So my name is Elliot Nauer. I'm an outreach specialist with the Southern Fire Exchange, working out of North Carolina State University. And I'm also joined by David Godwin, our program director. He's going to be helping out in the chat over here. Today, I'm looking forward to all of us hearing from Nathan Burmester from the Nature Conservancy in North Carolina, who has plenty of experience in fire management in this area and is going to be talking about some of the new technologies and tools that are being used in this space.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nathan Burmester. I'm the stewardship manager and the burn boss for the Nature Conservancy out of the Coastal Plain office, which is Wilmington, North Carolina. I've been here for about 3 years, and I've been doing fire for about 13 years. I don't know. I'm a nerd. I love talking about technology and trying to keep up to date on the newest stuff. I mostly love it because it makes my job easier. So I try to pick and find the best things out there and keep up to date and make things easier. So hopefully you find something useful in this presentation that can make your job easier. But I will say a little disclaimer that none of this is groundbreaking. A lot of it's been out for a while, but hopefully there's some new things in here for you, and hopefully there's maybe some new ways of using some older technologies or something you hadn't thought of. So with that, I will get into things. So the first thing I want to talk about here is AI. It's fairly new thing for most of us. And there's a lot of different things you can do with it. For example, you can make a background image for your starting PowerPoint slide. So this is an image I created with OpenArt AI art generator. It's a free thing. Most of the AI art generators, if you haven't used one, it gives you the ability to type in a phrase or whatever you're looking for. So I just typed in abstract phoenix rising made of fire with a black background. So something pretty straightforward. This one allows you to also upload like a little image or sketch, and it will kind of base its art on what you did. So you can see that little image I put in there. I just sketched out something for like a second and uploaded it. And this is what it spat out, which is by far anything something way better than anything I could generate or make. So it's pretty cool. And I don't know, there's a lot more. Obviously, there's a lot more uses for something like this. In the fire world, you may not be able to think of too many things. I use it in my personal life pretty frequently. Last week, I made a birthday card for my niece. And I just typed in something like cute golden retriever puppy with a birthday hat and a cupcake. And it came out with a great image, and I loved it. And I started using it. I pulled it into Photoshop and was gonna like put happy birthday on there and all this stuff. And I got like halfway through doing that, and then I realized that the puppy was like laying down, kind of like in front, and you could see its paws. But instead of just two paws, it had three paws in front of it. I'm like, okay, that's not gonna work. So I had to go back and try again. So what I'm trying to say is always make sure it's definitely not perfect. So make sure the image is it works for whatever you're looking at and trying to do. But there's also a whole bunch of like logo generators out there, AI logo generators, which that could be pretty useful if you're trying to come up with something as simple as your new t-shirt design or hat design or whatever it is. So I'd encourage you to check those out. Most of these things are free. Some you have to give them your email or something so they can spam you, but it's pretty valuable stuff for free. And then there's a lot of stuff like Chat GPT out there that allows you to generate documents and stuff, which could be super useful. It's not quite to where I want it to be yet. As a burn boss, I would love to have like an input my blank burn plan and tell it where I'm going to burn, and then have it spit out all the stuff. Obviously, it's not going to know like what kind of control lines I have or something like that, but it could do some of the emergency response stuff, some of the like ecological justifications for the burn and all that kind of stuff. It could be in there. And that would be amazing. It's not quite to that level yet, but it's. I gave this presentation a couple months ago, and a lot has changed even since then. So it is definitely racing forward. I think what we could do, like things that you can use this for right now. I use it for even like if I have to write maybe a delicate email to a landowner who's maybe not happy with me or something. I can write my email and then submit it to ChatGPT, and almost always it will spit out something that's way better than what I wrote, but it still has all of the like the general basis of what I did. And you can tweak it and edit it from there. But it's basically like taking my high school level of writing and submitting it to an author, and then being like, hey, I think you should do these things. And so far, it's been really great and improved a lot of stuff I've turned out. So I would recommend you look into that. I know a lot of folks in the business world that I've talked to are using AI right now for everything they do, and they were telling me if you're not actively using this, you're falling behind because it is where everything is going right now. So yeah, check out AI. And with that, I guess we'll get into my presentation. So some stuff we'll talk about here. We'll start off with drones because everybody, you need to talk about drones in these kind of presentations. Then we'll cover a couple different kinds of cameras, talk about some weather kits that you can get, and then we'll finish up talking about some software options out there. All right, so drones. The two drones you can see here are the two drones that we have in our office at the Coastal Plain, North Carolina. The one on the left is the DJI Mini 3 Pro. I bought that about a year ago, and the thing is absolutely tiny. It's like this big. It comes, or you can get a couple extra batteries for it. The flight time can be like 45 minutes. By 45 minutes of flying, I'm almost bored of it. So it's incredible what this little tiny thing can do, and it's so small. I actually, as a burn boss, I keep it in my fire pack on every burn that I'm on, and it's really unlocked a lot of possibilities for me. I think the biggest is being able to check burns and look for spot fires. For example, I did a burn last week. It was actually a 750 acre controlled burn that we did using the ignition drone, which is the other drone you see on the side there, but I'll talk about that in a sec. But we lit it with the ignition drone, but when you're burning that much area, you put up quite a bit of smoke. And what we were burning into was a creek, was the downwind line, and a lot of inaccessible fuel, really hard walking, so you couldn't really like check things out to make sure that the fire hadn't escaped. And so it was a great opportunity to put this drone up and kind of fly it off to the side, and obviously you could see the main smoke column we were creating, but also to check downwind and make sure that there wasn't extra smoke columns coming up or anything like that. And so just the peace of mind that gives you like during the burn is absolutely wonderful and priceless. I was also on a burn like 5 years ago that I was bossing, where we had the burn unit we were burning, and then there was 500 feet of kind of a buffer of stuff that wouldn't burn, and then this wet prairie that was like, I don't know, 500 acres probably. And if you're standing like in the prairie, it looked like it's just dried dead grass as far as you can see. And so I knew it was definitely going to be a potential we could have a spot fire in there. And so the day before the burn, I flew it with the drone, and once you get up above it, you can actually see that there are a whole bunch of little ponds and wet areas out there. And so I was able to identify like, okay, I think if we do have a spot, like we can probably contain it, that kind of thing. Well, come do the burn and the next day, and right at the end of the burn, I get a call over the radio, and I go down there, and sure enough, we had a spot fire in that. And standing on the edge of that prairie and seeing those 20-foot flames just ripping across that thing, just as far as you can, as far as you can see dry grass, that was pretty scary. But I had the drone on me. I put it up in the air and got over the fire and looked at where it was going. And sure enough, it was going straight into one of those wet areas. And then I was able to identify just this maybe like 50, 60-foot section that if we could, put some black line in there, we'd be able to cut this thing off. And so I was able to send a crew around the other side. They put in that line, back burned it, and it ran into all that wet stuff and went out. And we were able to control it versus, man, if you didn't have that aerial image, it would have been so difficult to figure out exactly where to attack this, how to attack this, and it would have been terrifying to see this thing just running across the prairie. So peace of mind, it's definitely worth it. You can also use it for monitoring. I'll talk about that a little bit more on the next slide, or a couple slides, but I think especially here, like we have a lot of fuels that burn very patchy, and so you can get up above and say, okay, well, we have probably 75% of the unit burned and 25% didn't. You can also get percent canopy scorch and stuff like that from the air, which is a little bit easier to do from the air in bigger units than it would be on the ground. I also think it's important to try to convey what we do to the public because the more they know about controlled fire, I think the easier our jobs is going to be. Right, they're going to support seeing smoke every day and breathing it in, perhaps, versus the alternatives of wildfire because it's going to burn one way or another. So I think if we have the opportunity to show them fire in a cool and engaging way, like from drone footage, we should absolutely take advantage of that. The ignition drone, the bigger one there, it will set you back quite a bit. It costs about $80,000. But if you compare that to a helicopter, this is something you get and can continue to use. So eventually you'll catch up in the costs there. But these drones, there's a whole bunch of different options out there. Buy whatever you want for what works best for you. But there's a lot of cool options. Crazy flight times up to 45 minutes. Different sizes and lots of capabilities with different kinds of cameras. You can apply herbicide with them. They're using them out west with the speakers to make a loud sound to trigger avalanches. Like there's a lot of cool uses for drones and yeah. I will say a couple of challenges if you're going to use them commercially. So pretty much what we're trying to talk about here. You do have to have your Part 107 drone pilot license, which it's not hard to get, but I will say the test is a little bit more difficult than I expected it to be. It's pretty much just a pilot's test, and you have to learn a whole bunch of things that don't necessarily pertain to drones, like air traffic patterns and how runway stuff. It's a lot of extra information, I think, but it's totally doable to get that. And then maybe the biggest challenge is currently the FAA regulations. You currently have to have visual line of sight on any drones that you're flying. And in the environments we're working, we quite often have trees. And so it's very difficult, especially when you get that drone a ways away from you, to be able to keep eyes on it. There's ways to work around it with radio communications and stuff, but right now it's a little bit limiting. And then also say, like, I bought this DJI Mini 3 Pro, I think about a year ago, and they've already come out with a new version. So as soon as you buy something, there's always a new version of it. Your technology is always rapidly advancing, so you fall behind pretty quick. Here's a video of a drone I took. And like I was mentioning, I think it is important to try to share, this information that we can with the public, because this is just totally engaging, right? You can see the different parts of the fire. You can see the head fire, the flanking fire, backing fires. You can see the lighting patterns as people are walking through. There's just a lot of really cool things that you get to see from a drone video that you don't necessarily if you're just taking pictures on the ground. So yeah, taking advantage of all the tools in our tool belt is definitely worth it. And then last thing I want to say about drones is the ability to do some mapping with them. The image on the right is a burn unit that we burned last year, and then our folks from our drone team in the state came and they flew a grid pattern over it, taking pictures looking straight down. And then you get some software that stitches all those pictures together, and you create what's called an orthomosaic. And so that's what you're seeing here. And it's actually like super detailed because all those pictures are taken at like 100 feet or 200 feet. And so you can zoom way in on this and see, each individual tree and hot spots and stuff like that. So there's a ton of data here, which is pretty cool. But when you back out on it, there's a lot of cool uses. Obviously, you can, monitor things like percent, ground cover consumption and canopy scorch, stuff like that. But at least in the coastal plain, we have a lot of units that are like this, where there's a lot of Picosin or really inaccessible fuels that are either they don't burn because they're wet, or they're really hard to walk through and you can't get people through them at all. And so when we burn a unit like this, if you're trying to send folks interior, you're just like, I don't know, you go until you can, and then you're gonna have to turn around probably at some point. I don't know. But now that I have this data, what I've done is I've taken it and created shape files of what burned and what didn't, and I'm adding that to our next burn map, and so we'll be able to tell areas that are inaccessible, because pretty much anything that's left green in this burn is something that is either very wet or way too thick to walk through. And so we know for the next time where we can and cannot access and what will and won't burn under most conditions, and that will improve firefighter safety as well as control of the fire itself, and what we plan to do and how we light it and all this stuff. So collecting that data, and then we have that forever, right? Whoever takes my job after me will be able to look at this data and be like, all right, I've never burned this unit, but I have a good idea how it's going to burn. So I think that's invaluable. You can also create different products with this, like NDVI, which is what you're seeing in the bottom left-hand corner. That's pretty much just an index of vegetation health. And so if it's greener, it comes back greener. And so you can tell the yellow and reddish areas, those are the areas that burn hotter. Not so much useful in this, but if you had like a beetle outbreak or something, it's very helpful for that. You can also create digital elevation models with this data. It doesn't do much in the coastal plain because they're so flat, but you can see, you can basically take this image and kind of like tilt it like you can on Google Earth and see, terrain and where the canopy is and that kind of stuff. And so if you did have some sort of terrain, you could view that from different angles and see the different slopes and how it burned on those different slopes and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. As I mentioned, you do have to have some sort of software to stitch all of those photos together. There's a couple different paid ones that are pretty common. So here we use Drone Deploy. I've used Pix4D in the past. That one's pretty good. And then there's free ones like Open Drone Map, which you can also use. There's kind of a steep learning curve on stuff like this, but it is totally doable. And if you give it the time, it's you can figure out and create awesome products like this for free. All right, kind of switching gears into different kinds of cameras here. So one thing that I think is going to kind of revolutionize the way, at least that I do monitoring, is a 360 camera. I bought one of these last year, and I think so. I bought this one, the One X2, and I think in the last year they've come out with 2 new versions of this. So, like I said, you're always falling behind. But in the past, what I've done for photo monitoring, pre or post fire pictures or whatever it is you're monitoring, you have maybe some base that's out in the woods that's going to permanent base that's going to stay there, and then you bring out some sort of pole and attach it to that, and then you got the thing that the camera sits on that attaches to the pole, and then you have the camera and it's got to fit in there just right so that every time you take a picture facing north, it's exactly north, it's exactly that same picture, and then you do east west and all this stuff. And it's kind of a hassle. It works, but it's a lot to carry. You have to have somebody who's trained and knows exactly how to set that stuff up. And then even when you do everything perfectly right, somehow that picture is always different than the last time you took it. But if you're doing it with a 360 camera, you don't have that problem, right? Maybe you have a piece of rebar in the ground and you take this thing out there. It's got a tripod that just sits there, and you click a button, it takes a picture of everything. And I think that's better for a couple of reasons. One, you don't have to adjust which way, you're taking a picture of everything, so you don't have to make sure it's lined up exactly right. It's just the single camera with the single tripod. You just set it there and you're done. That's it. You don't have to line everything out. And it's way easier for one person to do because all you need is the app on your phone, and you go out there and make sure you're in the right spot and then take the picture, and it does everything else for you. I also think it's kind of cool because the products you get are pretty unique. You can see that image in the background. It's something you don't normally see a picture like that looks like that, and so it's engaging to the public and people are interested in it. And this one, it's a little hard to tell with the colors, but there's pitcher plants in there that are almost as tall as the trees from this camera angle. So it is kind of cool, and it's an interesting perspective. And there's a lot of cool immersive things you can do, like the next slide I'll show you. But I think it's a good way to engage with the public, is what I'm trying to say. Even this camera that's now outdated takes 18 megapixel pictures, so it's pretty decent. The one thing I will say that's a drawback to this is the images themselves are a lot harder to share. Obviously, if you're just taking a picture, you can text that to somebody, you can copy and paste it, send it, whatever you want to do with it. But when it's these kind of images, you need to actually have like software on your computer that you can, you upload the pictures to, and then you can look at them in this software. So that's an extra step. And then I guess sharing them is kind of the other big problem, is not everywhere you can share these. For example, for me to get a 360 image into this presentation, I had to like Google and do a whole bunch of steps just to like get it. It wasn't just a copy and paste it in. So it is difficult to deal with some of these files. Things like Facebook and Google Maps can deal with 360 images, but definitely not everything. So that's a hindrance. But check this out. This is a 360 image. Hopefully it's working for you. And this shows something that I think is super cool. So last June, we had a wildfire in the Green Swamp Preserve here in the coastal plain of North Carolina. And the fire was almost 16,000 acres. It ran through the preserve, and where it burned hot. Everything you see on the right here, it torched out the trees. The mid-story is completely killed, all that stuff. Really good fire effects, but from the public's point of view, it burned hot, and it did. But check this out, right here, everything on this side is perfectly green. And that's because this fire ran into a prescribed fire that we'd done earlier in the year. So had we come and taken this exact same picture in January of this year, it would have been the exact opposite. Everything green would have been black, and everything black would have been green. And so what you're seeing is an ecotone here, an ecosystem line between the two ecosystems. And so the wildfire came and ran up to something that had already burned, and it just went out. And what is more powerful to show the value of controlled burns than an image like this to the public? I mean, you can show it in a picture, but if it's a 360 image, it's like they're standing there. They can look around, they can look at their feet, and there's Venus flytraps there. They can look up at the canopies of the trees and see, like, oh, everything's still green on this side, and over here, everything got cooked off. So I think it's a very valuable and powerful tool that we need to be using to kind of spread our point that prescribed fire is very valuable. All right, another camera that I got last year is an infrared camera. Here in the coastal plain, we have a lot of lines that are they're just like a mulched line. We can't go all the way down to bare mineral soil because we got like a couple feet of root organic matter kind of stuff. And if you did dig all the way down to bare mineral soil, it just becomes this muddy mess that you wouldn't be able to get equipment down anyway. So we're left with kind of an organic matter across the line, which, as you know, fires can smolder and eventually cross that line. So in those places, we have to try very hard to make sure that the edge is very cold to make sure after the fire it's not going anywhere. So I bought one of these to kind of see how it would work. And I was surprised how many options there are out there. There's a lot of them, and they're very easy to use. I will say, if you do get one of these and want to try it out, make sure you get one that has a very high temperature range. A lot of them go up to like 4 or 5, 600 degrees, and that's not enough. You need the ones that go up to about 1,000. What I've learned is everything that's black out there, stuff that burned a couple hours ago with the sun hitting it, and just little things like white ash and stuff, all of those register as quite hot all the time. But those aren't the things that we're looking for, right? We're looking for actual hot spots, actual smoldering. Those temperatures are a lot higher, so you need that more dynamic temperature range. And I'll show you a video of what that looks like in a sec here. I also will say that you have to have these things set up right. The way they work is when you're looking at something, it takes the coolest temperature it's sensing and the hottest temperature and makes your range, blue up to red or something, which is, if you're looking at a shrub, maybe under the shrub in the shade is blue and the sun hitting it is red. But then you look at the ground at something that's burned, and all of a sudden that temperature range changes dramatically, right? And now your blue, or I guess let's say your red, which was the sun hitting some leaves, maybe that's like 80 degrees. Now it's looking at black that had was recently on fire, and your warm is shifted to 200 degrees or something. And so it's constantly shifting and adjusting, which makes it a little bit difficult to tell what is actually something of concern. And you'll be able to see that in our next this video here. So this is just me walking down a control line, and everything you're seeing that's red there is, again, just black. That's nothing that you'd want to be worried about. But I have it set up so that if you see a number pop up or something that's pink, that's what you want to look out for. So I just saw something pink there. I look back, okay, you're seeing it's reading a number, and that's when you kind of want to investigate that area. And so it's reading, what, 500 degrees there? And look, you turn on the regular camera, and it's just the base of a stick and it's not smoking at all. So that's something that normally I would have walked right by. I never would have noticed it was there without the infrared. And so that would be a hot spot that I'd put water on at that point. So it definitely helps you identify that. And since then, I've switched to using kind of a black and white. The colors get a little disorienting, but black and white is very easy to tell what's hot and what's not. And so here again, I'm just walking down the fire line, and you can start to see some hot stuff in the distance. This is actually like open fire, open flame, so I probably would have seen it with my normal eyes, but what it's looking through is quite a bit of vegetation, and you can still see it. So even through that, so if you had something thick right on the line, you can still tell that it's hot, and it's a valuable tool. I would recommend it if you have situations like that where you're doing fire. All right, and then the last camera I want to talk about is nothing new at all. It's a trail cam, but this one, the Muddy brand, has the ability, and I don't know why every trail cam doesn't have this ability, but when you open the app, there's a button that you can tell it to take a picture right now, and it will send you a picture right now of what it sees. And I don't know why all cameras can't do that, but so far this is the only one that I've seen. And that unlocks the possibility. We were throwing around the idea of like, what if you put a rain gauge in front of this thing? Maybe you have a couple of properties and you're not sure how much rain they got last night. You could put a rain gauge in front of this thing in the morning, tell it to take a picture, and boom, there you go. You can see how much rain all of your specific sites got without actually driving to all those different locations. And maybe that helps you make your decision of where you can burn and can't burn that day. So maybe putting a rain gauge in front of it, maybe some fuel sticks. I don't know what the possibilities are, but it's definitely something to consider. So $80 for the camera plus the cell plan. But with that on-demand feature, you can actually see what it sees right now. And then speaking about weather, this is a picture of all of the ROS stations, so the remotely automated or automated weather stations in the area. And I have a preserve that is right in the middle of that red circle. And so you can see there's no ROS stations right near it. And unfortunately, it's right in that spot where storms from the coast kind of come in and they fade out. And so I was never sure looking at the radar how much rain that preserve was getting. So I wanted to buy a weather station so that I could actually get that data. And so every time I looked, it was they're all very expensive. Unfortunately, they were like all for like science. So the rain gauges would give you rainfall to like the millionth millionth of an inch. The temperature would give you to like the nth degree. Like I don't need that level of detail at all, and I don't want to pay $6,000 to $10,000 for a little weather station that so I can monitor how much it rained there. And that is when I found the Kestrel 6000, which I think has been out for about 2 years now. It's a little weather station. It has everything that you need to monitor, burn conditions, temperature, RH, wind speed and direction, your rainfall. And it's quite reasonably priced at $1,300 plus $50 a year for the cell plan. I think they have a Verizon and maybe an AT&T version, so whatever works best for your location. And that's another thing. The cell plans for those other sciencey ones were like $300-400 a year. So like this is so much cheaper and so easy to use. Basically, it comes in a box. You assemble it real quick, flip the on switch, it finds cell data, and then boom, it's sending stuff to your phone once you get the app. So it's super cool. And it's also part of the ambient weather network. And so it gives you access to a whole bunch of like privately owned weather stations. So take that with a grain of salt of how accurate the weather is you're getting from these spots. But in those gaps between ROS stations, it's invaluable. And so I took a video of what the app looks like. It gives you everything in this little dashboard. So you get your temperature, your wind speed direction, rainfall. There's your RH. It gives you a weather forecast and this sun and moon thing. But then it gives you a little quick view of all of those things kind of highlighted. And then you can go back up and any one of these parameters, you can click on the graph thing and it will show you over the last day or whatever how whatever how much rainfall you've had, what the wind speeds have been, all that stuff. And then you can select different time ranges. maybe this month, and it will show you all the data for that time range. So that's pretty handy. The one thing I will say that is less helpful is there's no accumulation of rainfall number. And so you have to go through all of these little peaks. And so you see, okay, 0.04 inches that day, 0.01 inches the day before. So you're like, okay, in the last week or so, I've had 0.05 inches of rain. You have to add it up manually. But other than that, it's super helpful, useful data. And then it will also makes these like summaries where you can see the average temperature and the high and low for whatever time periods you want to check out. And then this is a little bit more from that ambient weather network. So I'm zooming into Wilmington here. You can see all the weather stations that are just are privately owned, and they show you all kinds of things. So there's wind speed and direction. It wasn't very windy that day, so they're pointed all in different directions. Different temperatures, different rainfall. And that's the city of Wilmington, so obviously there's a lot of weather stations there. But I've been very impressed with, if you just zoom into the middle of nowhere, weather stations pop up. So there's quite a bit of weather station data out there if you happen to be in one of those spaces where you don't have a RAWS anywhere near you. So it's definitely worth checking out. I can't recommend it enough. And then the next weather thing I want to talk about is the Kestrel Fire Weather Kit. This is by no means new. I'm sure most of you have used the Kestrel 5500 Fire Weather. If you haven't, if you just use the basic Kestrels, this one's pretty cool. It will automatically calculate your fine dead fuel moistures as well as your pig and just spit those out so you don't have to do any calculations yourself. Saves you time. It also will keep like a graph of what it's done over the day, so you can view that data. But what I think is kind of cool here is they've come out with this weather vane for it, and so you just set it on a tripod and just leave it there all day, and it will turn with the wind, and it's constantly measuring and stuff. And so it's pretty cool. I usually set it up somewhere near test fire where it's out of the or will be out of the smoke. Um, and then you can kind of just come back to it throughout the day. And as soon as you're within Bluetooth connection, you can connect your phone to it and download the weather and see what it's been doing over the last hour and report on that. I think it's not quite where I would want it to be. I'd love to just drive up and like push a button and have it sync. It doesn't quite do that. You need to jump through some hoops. So what I usually end up doing is just you can also like record the data on your phone. So I'll get within Bluetooth range, start recording on my phone, and then hang around for 5 minutes or so while it's taking weather data. And that goes onto my phone, and then after 5 minutes, you hit OK, and that's like the time that you would have spent looking at the taking those measurements. It gives you the summary of this was your high temperature, your low temperature, your average, and so on and so forth, um, which is all cool. What I think is more valuable perhaps is that this thing you can set to, I mean, it can take measurements every second if you want. I think I have mine to set to take measurements every 5 minutes or something, but it's there all day. And so it's taking those measurements. And so God forbid something happens on your fire and it escapes. And it was an act of God. The wind switched 180 degrees. It wasn't predicted, anything like that. You have this thing constantly measuring the weather, and it saves it. And so at the end of the day, you can go back and look at and in the court of law be like, look at this. I have this weather that was taken on site, and this was not predicted at all. And so it might be valuable in something like that. I'm also a super big nerd, so I love having that data and attaching it to my burn plans afterwards and saying like, hey, look, there's the weather we had for that day. Next time, make sure it's, I don't know, 10% drier or something like that. Cool. All right, moving on to something that actually might be groundbreaking. If there's something in this presentation that could change the way I do fire, I think this is it. So we're moving into software here. This is the ATTAC program, or ATAC, I'm not sure. It was originally developed by the Air Force, so for military use, and at that time it was called the Android Tactical Assault Kit. And now they've renamed it for civilian use as the Android Team Awareness Kit. If you're using iPhones, there's iTac, and then if you're on a computer, they have a version called CivTac for civilian. But basically what it does is if you get this thing working right, it will show you on an aerial image where you are, just like Avenza or something. But it will also show the locations of all of your buddies or anybody that's a part of the team. And then what's super cool is you can put different points on there and then everybody can see that in real time. And I'll talk about that in a sec. But um, what you're seeing here is all those blue dots would be like, the people that you're working with, and you can set it up so that you have an aerial image in the background. Really, I'd say this app has too many options. It's kind of complicated to use because there's just so many capabilities. But you can also set up the background image to be whatever that green thing is. I don't know, topographic with some swamps and stuff. And then what's cool is you can upload geo-referenced PDF maps into the app, and then they display right on your map geo-referenced. So this is a burn unit map that I created, and you just load it in there, and then you can set the different transparencies. So you can actually see this one's like 50% transparent. So the lines from the map behind it are there. You can see the roads and the topographic stuff, and all at the same time you're seeing your actual burn units with the drop points that we've labeled, and then ideally everybody on your team that's burning this is also on there moving around. So that is pretty darn cool. On this slide, so these are more screenshots from the app, ATAC. In the bottom right corner, as I mentioned, anybody can put down different points. So I imagine if you have spot fire, you quickly put a point down where you're at as a spot fire, and that would totally get rid of the like, calling on the radio, I have a spot fire, I'm somewhere between Alpha and Bravo, I'm trying to fight this thing. No, now I know exactly where that spot fire is. And then on my screen, I can click that little hound dog symbol in the top right corner, and it will automatically draw a line, and it tells me right there that I'm 755 feet away from this spot fire. And then I can turn it so that it shows like a little arrow on my screen, and it will direct me wherever I need to go directly to get to that point. And it updates the elevations, it updates the distance, all of that in real time. And then ideally, you're seeing a whole bunch of other little blue arrows closing in on that. And it doesn't just have to be a point. You can also set like a radius. So if it's like, hey, I think I see smoke coming up from this area, I can set down a radius, and then everybody can go in there and grid out that area or something like that. So the possibilities are just ridiculous. There's so many options with this program. Like I said, it's a little too complicated. And it's been around for a couple of years now, and I haven't seen it take off, but I have seen that the U.S. Forest Service has started using it. So there's, hopefully it's coming. I think this would be, as a burn boss, this would be a game changer, right? Like you can see where all your resources are. If you send interior igniters through, you can make sure that they're safe. If somebody's not answering on the radio, you can see exactly where they are. If somebody gets hurt, a medical emergency, you know exactly where that's at and how to get there and how to get them out. If an equipment, so like an ATV gets stuck inside the unit and fire's coming towards it, you know exactly where that is. It just solves a lot of problems. And then, so that's a lot of safety things, which is absolutely the most important. For maybe the science side or nerdy side of things, now I can see exactly where my igniters went through, and then I can measure that back to the fire effects that I saw from that. So it's like, ooh, we did 2 chain spacing this time, and it got too hot, and this time I can change it to 1 chain or something. So there's a lot of possibilities with this. I will say that so far I have not been able to get this app to work so that I can see my friends. It appears like you need to have everybody join a server, and then we have to create a server, then everybody has to join that server, and then it should work. Right now, I tried to do this last couple of days. Their website is actually not working, so I wasn't able to like, mess around with this more to try to get it to work. But suffice to say that it's a really cool possibility, but it's also a little bit difficult to use. All right, and then talking about map making, this is something that has absolutely changed the way I do fire maps, and I love it, and I don't hear anybody else talking about it, even though it's available to most agency folks. You do have to have access to ArcMap or ArcGIS, as well as ArcGIS Online, but I feel like most agency folks have that accessibility. But what you can do is you can create a web app, and the web app can be pretty much whatever you want it to be. My examples here are going to be burn maps that I created. And so you can see in the background there, this is what the layer looks like that I made. The yellow dotted lines are our property boundaries. Orange lines are our burn units. We got roads, we got deer stands, structures, anything you want to show on your burn maps, you put it into this map. Then you can go, this is what the interface looks like on a computer. You can open it on your phone as well. And then there's a couple of tools. And so what I did here is I clicked on my burn unit. You can see it highlighted in red right in the middle, looks like a little mountain range. And then I clicked on the buffer tool and made a 2-mile buffer around this thing. And boom, all I have to do is hit my print button and I have my smoke map is done. There's my smoke map, done. Then I just click delete on the buffer and move on to the next thing. I can create a burn map. I can create my contingency map. Like, it's just so fast and so easy. It is amazing. It used to take me a couple hours to make all the maps for a burn plan. Now it literally takes a couple of minutes. It is night and day difference. Also, another way you can use this is you can draw on these maps. So what I've done here is I've highlighted a couple lines in green and a couple lines in pink, and then the logging decks, I put little polygons around, and then I can send this map to my fire crew and be like, hey guys, disc the pink lines, mow the green lines, and then protect all of the logging decks because we're going to be burning this unit. And then what I can do is export this as I hit the print button. It exports it as a georeferenced PDF, which ends up looking like this. And so they can then open this in Avenza Maps or whatever they want, and it's georeferenced, so their little blue arrow will show up exactly where they are, and they'll be able to, I took the lines off of this map, but they could have just as easily still been here. And so if they were disking that line, they could see exactly where I wanted them to start and where I wanted them to end. And how can they get lost? They have a perfect map that shows exactly where they are. And so it's a game changer. It made these maps super fast and easy, and I can't recommend it enough. If you have access to ArcMap or ArcGIS Online, you want to open the tool that's called the Web App Builder tool and upload all of your stuff into that. And then you can build a web app. Another software that's pretty cool is the Planet Labs Planet Explorer. I do believe you have to pay for this and you need an account for it, but it is cool. It has satellite imagery that's gathered virtually every day. On the left there, you see June 6, June 7, June 8. And so this is that same unit I was just showing you. And on the left side, it has this cool little data slider. You can look at two images side by side. So on the left, we have June 6th. And on the right, June 7th. It's a little hard to tell, but I burned that June 6th, and the picture was before I burned it. So you can see a before and after. And so if you slide that thing back and forth, it turns from green to black, which is pretty darn cool to have that data available. These images are roughly like 3-meter resolution, so it's not the best resolution, but this is only like a 100-acre unit, so to be able to zoom in this far is pretty good. And then they fly, one of the satellites has like 1-meter resolution, but that happens every like maybe once or twice a year. So those are much less frequent. But if you do need that specificity, that resolution, it does come around a couple times a year. So that's a cool tool as well. And if you don't want to put the cash up front for it, there's also this option, which is absolutely free, Google Earth Explorer. It's a little bit harder to use. You actually have to write code, either Python or JavaScript, to be able to interact with the tool. I don't know anything about programming, and I was able to do this in just a couple, maybe a couple hours. But there's lots of YouTube videos and blogs out there that I literally just copied and pasted bits of their code and changed it for like my location and exactly what I wanted. and it spits this out. You get well, there's different options. This is a Landsat 8 or actually Landsat 9 image, and so there's a lot of different satellites that you can get imagery from, but lots of options. If we zoom in here, this is that same image just zoomed in, and this is again from that Pulp Road wildfire in the Green Swamp that we had last year. And you can see in the middle there, that black area, that's from the wildfire. The white stuff at the top is clouds, so just ignore that. But what's super cool here is you can see those vertical kind of brown lines. That is from the helicopter when it was lighting interior strips, dropping balls. It was less intense there, and then the intensity grew. And so you can actually see that level of detail from space, which blows my mind. And within the boundaries of the green swamp there's a lot of green areas and a lot of areas that are more of a brown or gray, not the black. Those are areas that we either are usually either way too wet, or they're areas that we do consistent controlled burning. And so one of those areas is that picture, that 3D image or the 360 image that I showed you earlier. Again, that stuff is visible from space. The effects of our prescribed fire on this wildfire is visible from space. So that's super cool. You can also get infrared images. So this is just a false infrared image that basically shows the same thing, but there's a whole bunch of bands is what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of data there whatever you're trying to use it for. And with that, I'll open it up to questions. Those are the things that we talked about.
Great. Thank you, Nathan. That was a great overview. As a self-identifying tech nerd myself, it's really interesting too. Really glad that you brought up that ATAC. That's something that I wasn't aware of, and seems that everything that I had ever dreamed of from an operational standpoint, even if it sounds like there's too much stuff crammed in there right now, but it does seem really promising.
Definitely.
So yeah, I do want to get to some questions. So if anyone has any questions, go ahead and add those into the Q&A tool so we can go through those. One that I saw come up in the chat earlier was someone asking about the security of things like trail cams and remote weather stations, and the concern of when you leave them on unattended on public lands, how frequently they've seen them be damaged or stolen. So I think they were wondering if you faced that yourself and if you have any tips on how you've addressed it.
Thankfully, nothing's been stolen. I definitely put the weather station in a spot that I knew wasn't visible from any roads or anything like that. It's way back in the woods. What I have had problems with though is the bears. 3 times now in the last year, I've had a bear either tip the station over or smash it. So I'm currently looking at ways to stop the bears from messing with it. I got a couple options. They make something that looks like a trail cam that when there's like motion, when it detects motion, it emits like an ultrasonic beep that apparently scares away bears. I don't know if that will work, maybe once or twice, but I'm open to options on that. The other thing I will say is I was worried about that as well. So I did everything I could to make it really inconvenient for somebody to steal it. So I bought ground screws and screwed it in and then tied cables to it. So you really gotta go to town ripping up cables and stuff if you want to try to steal it. So just trying to make it as inconvenient. And I haven't done this yet, but you could also put like a trail cam on it with cell service. So if somebody did come in front of it, you'd get the picture and you could, hopefully call a game warden or something.
Cool. Yeah, those are good tips. Just doing things to make it reduce the opportunity for people, make it a little less convenient. Let's see. Someone was asking how much the mini drone is and if it's worth it. Sounds like you carry it all the time, right?
I do. I absolutely think it's worth it. That one, the DJI Mini 3, they've actually come out with a Mini 4 now, so of course it's out of date. I think the Mini 4 costs about $1,000. You want to get I think they call it the Fly More bundle. It just basically brings you extra batteries that have like a higher capacity, so that gets you that 45-minute flight time. By the time you're all said and done with the controller and everything, I think it's like $1,300 roughly. But definitely worth it. If that's too much for you, there's a lot of other drone companies out there that are much cheaper. DJI is kind of the top of the line right now.
Cool. I guess while we're talking about drones and possible cost barriers. Someone's asking if you know of any resources available to train and supply drones to the government as private contractors.
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. What I do know is within the fire world, they've opened up a task book chain regarding drones. There's two levels. The first one is drone pilot. I don't know if it's drone boss. That would be a sweet title, but whatever the second level is, you have to become a drone pilot first before you can move into that second level. Um, and so I know there's a ton of demand for those classes. You have to take a class, and then there's the task book associated with it. And there is a ton of tasks in those task books. So it's not an easy thing to get. But I think if you got those certifications, you would be in very high demand because virtually every wildfire now, they want people flying drones at night with infrared imagery so they can figure out where all the hot spots are. And so you'd be in really high demand if you can get that certification.
Yeah, that's good to know about the task books that have been started with that. Let's see. One of the earlier questions was someone asking if the AGOL map was hosted on the NIFC org. I'm not sure what the AGOL map is. Maybe that's familiar to
That's
you, but
ArcGIS Online.
okay,
Um,
gotcha. Yeah,
and it's hosted on what? I missed that last part.
the NIFC, National Interagency Fire Coordinating.
I don't believe so. So the RGS Online is an Esri product, ERSI. It's an Esri product. So once you have access to that, you can, once you have access to RGS Online, you can go ahead and make that web app. You don't need NIFC or anything. You can pull in whatever data sources you want. It's just like ArcMap or ArcGIS, whatever they call it now, the desktop version of it, where you can pull in whatever data you want. So if you had, FTDIS data or whatever that you wanted to see on your map, you can put that in there, and it doesn't just have to be burn maps. I mean, you could use this I am using it actually for invasive species, whatever it is. You can pull this up, and it's just awesome because you can pull it up on your phone and edit the data right there, and it's way easier than ArcMap.
And Nathan, I'm not sure if you're aware, but someone in the chat earlier had a little pro tip that the web app builder is actually being retired this year by Esri, and it's being replaced by something called the Experience Builder. I have no idea if that's a different tool or rebranding or whatever, but if people are looking for that later, they might have to look for that Experience Builder instead.
Yep, they're opening up more capabilities to it and kind of combining several things. They have a dashboard tool, which is also really cool. So yeah, it's again, as soon as I give this presentation, everything's out of date. So it's constantly changing, which is great. It's great.
Cool. Someone's asking which infrared camera you use. They said that they have one that isn't able to be calibrated, and they struggle like you talked about.
Yeah, that is definitely an issue. The one that we have on our Alta X drones, that's the Ignis system, the big ignitions drone. That one is the brand is called Works Well, which is kind of ironic because we've had a lot of camera issues and it doesn't work well. But that's just our experience. I don't know about other folks. I've also used an infrared image or camera on a Parrot drone. And that one worked better. I don't remember the exact like what the camera company was called, but it was on a Parrot drone. The thing I will say is if you're using it for trying to find hotspots or something like that, flying at night seems to be the best way to kind of get around any of the issues with solar radiation heating up the canopies of shrubs, which then come back as hotspots. So if you can fly at night when everything's a little bit cooler, you're only going to get the hotspots that are actually fire.
Cool. And while we're talking about calibration, someone was asking how often you have to calibrate the Kestrel station sensors, and do you do that yourself, or do you have to send that off to someone to get that done?
I've always sent them back in to have them done. I don't think there's a manual way of doing it. But with that said, it's very rare. I actually was using a Kestrel that I know is like 6 or 7 years old. and I was using it with a brand new one. I was using them side by side just to see how accurate it was, and they were both like right on. I mean, there's like 1 or 2% RH difference, but for the most part, it was still right on where I would want it to be. So within the realm of acceptability. So I don't think you have to send them back in all that often.
Okay, great. Let's see. Someone was asking in the Landsat image that you used, it seemed to follow the clouds, seemed to follow the smoke plume. They're just curious if those were potentially pyrocumulus clouds or if that really was just clouds that day.
No, I wish they were something more exciting, but it was just clouds. We did have with that wildfire, it did spark a thunderstorm downwind, which was pretty cool, but it made a lot of people angry because all of the ash that was falling now kind of turned into cement. Once you add water, it sticks to everything. So, but from a science and weather perspective, I thought it was pretty darn cool to see that happen.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Let's see. Well, that pretty much takes up all of our time here. So I just want to say thank you again, Nathan. That's really great overview, all the technologies that are out there, all the different ways that we've been thinking about using them. Um, but with that, then thank you everyone for attending. Thank you again, Nathan. I hope you all found this as informative and interesting as I did, and that you'll join us for our future webinars. Thank you.
Thanks, folks.